The other night, I was putting my 4-year-old to bed.
Okay.
He wasn't being super cooperative.
Okay.
At one point, I was going to say, 4-year-old's name. And instead I said, Ramsay, just listen.
Oh, no.
And he looked at me and I'm like, no, it happened.
What did he say?
He just looked at me and kept doing what he was doing. He wasn't listening anyway, but so there you go.
Great. I'm so thankful that I remind you of when your son misbehaves.
When
your son misbehaves. Yes. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to Words Are Hard, a writing and editing podcast. I'm your host, Ramsay, the extrovert in charge of keeping the conversation going.
And I'm your other host, Rachel, editor, indie author, and English teacher.
Today's episode is about designing characters, right?
Yep.
Okay. It's going to be a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah. I prepared for this episode.
I did not, but apparently I did. I forgot that I put this fun fact in. So I showed up here saying that I had nothing done, and you pull up the episode guide, and you're like, look, your fun fact. Hey. There it is. So your fun fact for today, do you know what the most common name for a main character is?
What is it?
Well, according to a study on StephenFollows.com, the most popular main character name is John.
John.
Yeah, John.
Right. Do you think that's because it's the most common male name?
I don't think that it is anymore. Well, maybe anymore.
It's consistently in the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around for a very long time. I mean, it's biblical.
Right.
But, I don't know. Maybe. That could be. Or, I mean, yeah, I mean, you get John Doe. Let's cut all of that out.
This is your portion of the podcast, man. This is what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah. I don't know why. I would imagine that has something to do with it. I think the study, it's actually kind of cool. If you can go and find it, StephenFollows.com or StephenFollows.com. There's a lot, like, it goes into crazy depth about all these character names, women's names. I don't recall that. I'm sorry. How many, like, statistics between how many male characters there are versus female characters.
Did they differentiate for genre?
I don't recall there being that. I think it was, and it wasn't just in writing. It was in screenplays.
Oh, okay.
Theater.
I can see how that would have an effect. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it was 360,000 scripts, and they found that John was the number one.
Sure.
So my question for you is, how do you get your names? Because in the first Word Weaver, I mean, you created a language. 3 languages. Sorry. So you created 3 languages. How the heck do you come up with names for 3 languages?
The language kind of, just the way that I do things, it evolved around the names. So I would look at meanings that I wanted to use for names, and then I would build the language around it. So if I wanted, Vilden, for example, means wild, like a wilderness.
Yeah.
So then I built the language around that, and I made the word wild and other words related to it, and then the language developed from there.
So are you taking Vilden is that Norwegian?
That one is taken from I don't remember off the top of my head if it's Norwegian, but Scandinavian. The name is Vilda.
The name is Vilda.
Yes, the real name is Vilda.
Okay, so you just changed the name a little bit.
Yep, for that one.
And then started using that as an inspiration for the language?
I worked it into the language.
Oh.
So then that name was one of the first ones that I started with to build the language around. So that one is a little closer to like the actual name Vilda. But then there were other names, meanings that I wanted, where I developed, I made the words in the language and then I adapted it to, okay, well, how would a name evolve from this word or these words? How would this name in this language affect what people would call someone in this language because they're developing alongside each other, things like that.
So do normal people get this in depth?
I don't.
Or do they just call them John?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're writing fantasy, you go a little bit more in depth with the language of the names, but
This seems like an insane amount of
well,
detail.
okay. Language creation is a separate hobby for me. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily something that every writer would need to do, even every fantasy or sci-fi writer. You don't necessarily need to go to this level of it. I enjoy doing it.
So your editing packages, does that include name creation and language building for these worlds that other writers are making?
Well, I do offer book coaching, which it could fall into that. You know, you have questions about your world building, I can help you with that, sure.
Well, there you go. You've heard it here first. You need help making a language. Rachel's gotcha.
It's yeah, it depends on the genre you're writing. You're obviously not going to develop a language for a story that you're writing that's set in contemporary Wisconsin, probably.
Okay.
If you're writing like a realistic fiction, like you don't need to do that. A lot of people do look at the meanings of names though. A lot of writers will say, you know, oh, I need this character to be strong and decisive. So yeah, maybe I'll use the name John because that it feels like a solid name for a solid character
Yeah, I mean,
as opposed to naming the character something like Wellington. You know, you're not going to get that same feeling.
no, John. It is a good strong name. I mean, how many kings have been named John? You got Jon Snow. You got lots of other things. So I agree. John is a nice strong name, and you it does need to match the vibe that you're going for the.
Or it needs to circumvent the vibe you're going for effect. So if you have a character named Wellington who people are going to then assume, oh, this is a, not a strong, exciting character, and then he comes out of nowhere with awesome spy skills. Like you can play
Well,
that up for
I
effect too.
suppose because yeah, I mean, how many movies out there? Jason Statham, and the guy's name is super weird. Maybe that's not a good example. I don't know if Jason Statham's characters are ever named weird things, but
I don't know. I don't watch those kind of movies.
fair enough. Your husband does.
He does, yeah. They give me nightmares, so I don't watch them. I don't know the character names.
Okay, we're getting a little off topic here. What's your other show note that you've got right there?
So the study of names is onomastics, which is another one of those things like etymology that I just really enjoy.
Onomastic?
Onomastics. Yep.
Okay.
It's basically etymology, but names.
But names. So
Yep.
origins
So
of names.
origins, history, how it develops, how the meaning changes.
Because I feel like you can go on Google and search in what does John mean? And you're going to get these crazy.
You're going to get a lot of different results. John, John will be more solid because,
Well, yeah, okay. It's John.
right.
Right.
But yeah, if I searched Rachel, especially with the spelling difference, because my name is spelled Rachael, you'll get things like, oh, this is your star sign, and
Yeah.
this is the meaning of Rachel, and it actually means sweet and thoughtful.
Well, yeah,
And
I've been seeing now that it's like R means radiant.
yes.
A means.
Yeah, you want to find a more reputable source for what those names mean. I use behindthename.com and nameberry.com. Those are my two favorite resources because they
Okay.
dig into, this is what this name comes from. Rachel is a Hebrew name. It means female sheep, and it tracks back. This is how we know that. These are the other uses. These are
Hold
people
on.
who've had that name. These are characters who've had that name.
Back that up. It means a female sheep.
It means ewe, like EWE.
Okay, so
ewe.
Ramsay is Old English for a ram's island.
Yeah. You didn't know that?
I did. Well,
No,
I didn't know about you
yeah.
being a sheep. I knew
Yeah.
it was Hebrew and it was something about God and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's that.
No,
but
I mean sheep.
no, that's funny that you're sheep and then I get Old English, which is Ram's Island.
Mhm.
But then alternatively, it goes to Old Norse and it means a raven's island in Old Norse.
Sure.
So
Now who's getting off topic?
this guy. All right. So that's cool. What were those websites again?
Behindthename.com and Nameberry, like a strawberry.
Nameberry. I like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Nameberry is really great because you can search by lists. So if you are writing historical fiction set in Victorian England, you can search
Really?
most popular names in Victorian England. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a really great resource. I use it a lot.
Well, I might have to use that for some trivia stuff that I do.
Yeah.
That would be
Oh,
a good
tell me
source.
when you do Onomastic trivia. I can be there for
You can
that.
be there, all right. Well, with that being said, let's move on to our main topic of today, and that is character building. So, why don't you take it away?
When you build characters, you want to keep a few things in mind. I always try to start with character arcs. So, how does the character change throughout the story?
So, you already have that thought of before writing anything down?
Well, it depends. There's different ways to do it. Some people will start with the plot. Some people will start with the world building or whatever. Characters are my favorite parts of stories, so that's what I start with. But yeah, you want to have an idea of at the beginning of the story, my character is like this. By the end of the story, my character is like this. What happens to get them there?
Interesting. So, you might. So, if you're going to have in your story that this character is going to die, are you having that already thought of ahead of time, or as you're writing, you're like, you know what, this would make a good move and kill them?
It depends. We're getting kind of into more plot territory than character arc. Character arc is really about like the personality of the character
Okay.
and not, I mean, it is what happens in the story, but only insofar as it affects that character.
Okay.
So there are three main character arcs. There's a bunch of other ones, but they all kind of fit into these three main levels.
Okay.
You have a character who has positive change.
Okay.
You have a character who has negative change.
So like a protagonist type.
Protagonist usually is what this is focused on, but
Okay.
every character could have
So I
an
mean,
arc.
it's your villain origin story.
Sure,
So
yeah.
to where they may start off in the beginning of the book as a good person or a decent person, and something happens to them, and now they turned into a bad guy.
Yeah,
Or
but
is that oversimplifying it?
well, yeah, it's oversimplifying a little, but so for example, Anakin Skywalker.
Okay.
Like you start that story where he's a young, hopeful Jedi. He's super powerful. He's learning from a mentor that he trusts and respects. That should be enough to give him a positive character arc. But then all these other things happen, and you slowly watch him descend from this position of, okay, we started with the hero, and now what did we end up with?
Okay.
So, yes, it could kind of be taken as a villain origin story. A lot of books.
But I mean, that's over 6 movies of villain origin story. I don't really think that's an origin story anymore. That is straight just character development.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that would be a negative character or a negative arc. The last one is a flat or a static arc, one that doesn't change. You have a character
So
who
they're just
starts.
solid,
Yep.
solid the whole way through.
Yep, they start one way. Usually in an arc like this, it's the events of the story and the other characters that are changing around them. And then the one character stays the consistent. So Sherlock Holmes is a good example of this. Like, he doesn't
'Cause
really
he's
change.
he's chaotic neutral the whole way through.
Well, I mean, sure, if you want to put it that way. But like he doesn't really, he does develop a little bit throughout the, I'm talking the original Arthur Conan Doyle,
Yeah.
the books,
I can
the
pretend like I
stories.
read those.
There is some development that happens. He becomes a little bit more personable. He becomes a little bit less,
Of a dick.
eh, I don't want to say that because that's like the modern movies really play that up a lot more than what it is in the books.
Oh, okay.
But he does grow a little bit. But for the most part, his main characteristics don't change.
Well, it's almost kind of like Sheldon in Big Bang Theory.
No, that is a very
well,
that is a positive change. He absolutely develops, his characteristics grow.
okay.
That doesn't really
Okay.
happen in the Sherlock books.
Okay. I was just kind of thinking Benedict Cumberbatch is Sherlock.
Yeah, no, they play that up.
Well, but he doesn't change much until he starts like, well, maybe having a roomie type thing isn't so bad, and a partner isn't so bad.
The point
Okay.
of the story is, look at these cool hijinks that I'm going to solve with this fancy new deductive reasoning that isn't really a thing yet.
Okay.
Because I mean, they're written in the 1800s.
Yeah. He was ahead of his time.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So the 3 things, what are they again?
positive change, negative change, flat.
And flat. Okay.
Yep. And there are more specialized arcs that fit into these categories, but these are the main ones.
Okay. So how many have you written any negative arcs?
I tend to not enjoy that as much, so
Okay.
I don't really write
Well,
it very often.
And you're too good of a person. You can't like screw with something and start slowly turning them evil.
I
I
don't
feel
think
like you
that
would
has
have
anything to do with it. There are
no.
plenty of writers that are wonderful, wonderful
Well,
people who.
okay. I'm just talking you specifically.
No, it's
Like,
just not the kind of story I enjoy. So I
okay,
don't write it because it's just not what I like.
okay.
I like positive change. I
You
like
like okay.
taking a character who starts out one way and grows through the power of friendship and found family.
just
I like those
just
stories.
yucky, lovey-dovey.
Yes, give me the cheesy, give me the, the real treasure was the friendship we found along the way. That's
Oh
my
my
kind of story.
god. All right. I don't know where to segue from here. What? So you've got these three styles of character arcs: the positive, the negative, and the flat. How do you how do you do that? How do you implement those character arcs into your story?
This is where you start to play with the plot. The character arc and the plot are going to go together because the character can't develop if nothing happens,
Right.
whether it's positive or negative or even flat, because the purpose of the flat arc is to highlight what's going on around them. And either way, you need plot for that. Some people will use a system like Save the Cat to tie in what does the character want? What is the goal of the story? How do those things work together?
What is Save the Cat?
Save the Cat it was actually developed for screenplays, which turned into how to write novels according to this kind of system. It's a story structure, like a template. People use the term beat sheets.
Beat sheets.
Beat sheets.
Okay.
A beat is a moment in the story where a particular thing happens.
Okay.
So Save the Cat specifically breaks down the three act story structure. So you have a story, it has three main acts, right? The beginning is
and the beginning, the climax, and the end.
yeah, essentially.
Okay.
And then within those acts there are beats or specific things that happen to lead you to the next beat, to lead you to the next beat.
Okay. So
And
Save the Cat is a beat.
Save the Cat is the name of this structure.
Is this specific? Okay.
It breaks it down into a formula. And Save the Cat focuses a lot on the plot. So these are the things that happen in the story to get to the next thing, to get to the next thing.
Okay.
When you work the character arcs into that and you say, why is the character doing what they're doing to move you on to the next beat? What lie does the character believe that is keeping them from getting what they want? What truths do they have to learn in order to get what they want? How do they overcome that lie? Those are things that lead to character development, whether it's positive, negative,
Or static or flat.
flat, static, flat, same thing.
Well, that's a lot. So how? I mean, you're pretty just based off of how you're talking about this. This is something that you're pretty well versed in and pretty. I don't necessarily want to say passionate about, but you're skilled in this area. It seems, at least being able to talk about it. How? What kind of resources besides reaching out to you? What kind of resources are out there for people to learn this type of character development?
Well, there's a book, Save the Cat, that will kind of walk you through each of the beats, how to do this. There's a lot of resources. I mean, I can't even name them all. There's too many. If you Google how to write a character arc, you'll get a bazillion resources that
Well,
you can
and
use.
that could be too overwhelming for some people. So if you had to point somebody in the direction of two resources to be able to help with character development, what would the first one be?
Bethany Hensel.
And she is who?
She's an editor. She also has classes. I took one of her classes, the Story Academy class, last spring,
Okay.
and it was phenomenal. Just the way that she can take those big pictures and break it down into, okay, now here's how you actually do this.
Okay.
She's amazing.
So
that's
so this sounds like a future episode that we're gonna have to get Bethany on here
yeah,
to talk about some stuff.
that would be wonderful. Yeah,
Okay.
she's
So
amazing.
how do you find Bethany's socials, Discord? Where can you find her?
Bethany's website is theempoweredwriter.com. She also has a podcast called The Empowered Writer Podcast. Although, no, actually, she just changed it to the Digging Deeper podcast.
The Digging Deeper.
Digging Deeper.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you can find her on Twitter and Instagram, Bethany Hensel. Hensel.
Okay,
Hensel.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so Bethany, we'll get you on here at some point, hopefully. But she's a good resource to check out. That would
yes.
be your number one to go to for aspiring writers who may need some help with this stuff, or maybe not even aspiring writers, just somebody maybe you're stuck. Reach out to her.
Hmm.
Okay, what's your number two?
I don't. I don't have a number two.
Oh, okay, so Bethany, that's a glowing review. Just go check her out.
Yeah, I mean, you just really the best way to do this is to do it.
Is it? Yeah, it's kind of a trial by error or
Yeah, I mean,
trial by fire,
read books with character arcs that you like, watch movies with character arcs that you like, figure out what you like about them, and then work it into
and
your own
then write
story.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay. What else you got?
Some people will use character questionnaires to try and develop their characters. A lot of character questionnaires are ones that I don't find super helpful because they'll have questions like, what is your character's birthday? What is your
Well, hold on,
character's
back it up. What is a character questionnaire?
their
Like a
questions?
personality test?
No, they're questions that you fill out about your character to help you get an idea of, all right, who is this character? So things like what color eyes do they have? What color hair do they have? How tall are they? Do they have any siblings? Things like that, which can be helpful. I mean, you should know basically what your character looks like. You should probably have that written down somewhere so you don't describe them as having blue eyes in chapter 1 and green eyes in chapter 3. But
I never would have even thought of that. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not a writer, obviously, but I never would have thought you should write down your character. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's good to know those things, but a lot of times,
I mean, how often are you going to be saying in your book that this guy is 6'2"?
right, that's my point. A lot of it gives you just details, but they're not necessarily helpful details. They could be. Maybe the character's height really is important. Maybe it gives something away about their history or their culture, not their culture.
Or maybe their genetics or something that.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah, so it might be important. But if you're just picking blonde hair because that's the first thing that popped into your head, do you necessarily need to include that in the story? Probably not.
Okay.
More helpful questions would be things that dig into the character's personality. So instead of saying, yeah, all right, they have a little brother, how does that affect that character? How does it affect the way that they look at the world? What is their relationship with their little brother? Those are things that are more important to know about the character than just, yep, this character has a sibling that we never talk about or mention.
Yeah, that seems so. These character guides, sheets, what did you call them?
Questionnaires.
Questionnaires. So they have a lot of not applicable things in there.
Right. You need to be able to look past the fluff questions to get at the ones that actually tell you something about that character.
So you don't necessarily need to fill this entire thing out.
No.
You just pick and choose what you believe is relevant.
Yeah. They can be helpful things to question, maybe my character, their relationship with their brother is really important. Maybe it has caused some insecurities or some pain points that I can bring up later in the story, even if the brother isn't in the story. It's just something that I want to keep in mind. Maybe they have a friendship that reminds them of that
Yeah,
brother
okay.
later on. Just something that you can use to develop the character later on, as opposed to this is random trivia that I know about this person that I made up.
It's almost like having an inside joke that you're not really going to share with people, but you're
Right.
kind of sharing it. And it's like, what's the point of having that then?
Right.
Okay. So have you thought about putting a character questionnaire out there, like writing your own one and putting that out there? Like, hey, yeah, what is their hair color, eye color, all that kind of stuff, but you're going to leave out what is their zodiac sign, that kind of stuff. Have you thought about making your own one of those and sharing that?
No, because my character questionnaire would be tailored to each story. I would have, I don't even use the same set of questions when I develop my characters across different worlds.
Okay. Would that be something you would include in a developmental edit?
Yes, not necessarily here's a questionnaire that I want you to fill out, but I would be able to say, these are some questions that I have as the reader. This is what I want to know about the character. These are some things that if you figure them out and if you add these details, It will help the character feel more realistic, more well-rounded.
Okay, well, that's all you got. Then let's go on to the word of the day. And what is the word of the day?
Hornswoggle.
That sounds, I've heard that before. What is hornswoggle?
Hornswoggle means to cheat, swindle, hoodwink, or hoax.
Like we needed another word for that.
Right? It's a great word. It comes from 1829.
Okay. 1829. That
1829.
sounds like a very 1829 thing to say.
Yep. It's just slang.
Scroll back down. When was the most popular use of that?
The
1930s?
Yeah.
Why in the 1930s, in the midst of world wars?
Well, no, it is between.
It's a hornswoggle.
Yeah. Well, it feels like also like a 30s and 40s term.
It does. It does. Almost a little roaring 20s ish, but I guess you would see the rise of it
Yeah.
starting in the 20s and it's reaching its peak popularity around the 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And then a drastic decline.
Yep. Although
Up until
it
2000.
had a little bit of a resurgence in 2013,
That's okay.
2017.
I bet you it was a meme.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good word.
Hornswoggle.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the etymology of hornswoggle? Where does it come from?
It just says probably a fanciful formation. So someone made it up, and other people were like, "Yeah, that's a good one."
That's a good one. Okay. Well, if you enjoyed the show today, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Share with your friends or someone who needs to learn some grammar. You can also sign up for Rachel's newsletter at rosedeanediting.com. That's ROSEDENE editing.com. And join us next week as we dive into developing a consistent voice. And remember, words are hard.
We're here to help.